When the HOA threatened me, saying my electric fence was illegal, I walked into court with evidence that shut their mouths completely. And when the judge announced the verdict, the HOA's faces turned pale. You won't believe what they got caught for. I never imagined a simple morning on my property would turn into a nightmare. The sun had barely crested the hills, casting long golden streaks over my backyard. Birds chirped, the wind whispered through the trees, and everything seemed normal, until I saw the notice. The HOA letter. Bold letters on the page screamed threats I couldn't ignore. Immediate removal of all unauthorized installations or face legal consequences. Unauthorized installations. I froze, my eyes scanning the words over and over. Unauthorized? This was my land, my property, my rules. But somehow, to them, it didn't matter. My stomach twisted, my pulse quickened. A wave of anger washing over me, but beneath it, a cold, calculating resolve began to form. I poured myself a coffee, sat on the porch, and stared at the fence line where my garden met the HOA's claimed boundary. Every post, every wire, every inch felt like a challenge thrown at me. Not today, I muttered under my breath. And that's when the thought hit me. An electric fence. It wasn't reckless. It wasn't about hurting anyone. It was about protection, defense, and making absolutely clear that my land was mine. I went inside and pulled out my laptop. I started researching local laws, property rights, and safety regulations. Every click, every page, every line of text hardened my decision. I wasn't just going to react. I was going to prepare. I spent hours thinking. Memories flashed in my mind. Walking through this backyard as a kid, imagining my future, dreaming of planting trees and building a life here. Working weekends in the dirt, sweating under the sun. Every bit of effort a testament to my dedication. The day the HOA first came around, claiming things that weren't theirs. That smirk, the arrogance. The rage inside me grew, but I didn't let it control me. I needed a plan, something undeniable, something that would leave no room for misunderstanding. I imagined the officers showing up again, clipboard in hand, thinking they could intimidate me. I imagined them trying to cross the property line, unaware of what awaited. I imagined a fence, wires humming gently, protecting everything I had worked for. I drew diagrams, mapped out the perimeter, and double-checked every measurement. Safety was my top priority. I didn't want to harm anyone, just to send a clear message. This is private property. Trespassers are not welcome. I purchased insulated posts, warning signs, and a high-quality electric fence kit. Nothing too aggressive, just enough to deter anyone who didn't belong. I set up a schedule, planning to work early mornings and late evenings. Each post I placed, each wire I strung, felt symbolic. Every hum of the electric current was a declaration. I stand my ground. Of course, it didn't take long before they noticed. One afternoon, as I was connecting the last stretch of wire, I saw their truck rolling down the path. 2 HOA officers stepped out, clipboards in hand, faces wearing those smug expressions that had fueled my anger for months. "You again," one of them said. "Yes," I replied calmly. "I'm here to protect my property." Their eyes narrowed. "This fence is unauthorized. You are violating HOA rules. We could take legal action," the officer warned. I smiled faintly, keeping my voice steady. "I've checked every regulation. This fence is fully legal. I suggest you stay back and respect the property line." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. I could feel my heart pounding, not from fear, but from the thrill of finally taking control. They didn't realize that every post, every wire, every warning sign was meticulously documented. Photos, timestamps, legal references, all filed safely on my phone and in print. When they tried to argue, I showed them the evidence. I have records of every installation step, including safety measures. I'm fully compliant, and any attempt to interfere will be considered trespassing. For a moment, their smug expressions faltered. They weren't used to a landowner fighting back. Not like this. And I wasn't done yet. Later that night, I sat on the porch again, looking at the faint glow of the fence lines. Each hum of electricity was a heartbeat, a pulse of defiance. I thought about my family, my home, and the countless hours invested in this property. No one, not even a powerful HOA, could take that from me, not without facing consequences. I whispered to myself, "Let them come. Let them threaten. I'm ready." And that was the moment everything changed. The power dynamic had shifted. They had underestimated me. They didn't know what I was capable of. Tomorrow, the court case would begin. And when it did, they would regret underestimating me. The morning light spilled across my vineyard, golden and calm. A stark contrast to the storm I knew was about to hit. I walked along the newly installed electric fence, each hum of current like a heartbeat of defiance. I had spent hours double-checking every post, every wire, every sign warning trespassers. This wasn't just a fence, it was my statement, stay off my property. I hadn't waited long for a reaction. Their truck rolled down the gravel path, kicking up dust in the early sun. 2 HOA officers stepped out, clipboards in hand, their confident smirks already faltering the moment they saw the fence. I could practically see the gears turning in their heads, wondering what kind of crazy landowner would go this far. "You actually did it," one of them said, disbelief in his voice. "I did," I replied evenly, my eyes locked on theirs. "And I suggest you respect the property line." They hesitated, shifting from foot to foot. I could sense the panic beneath the surface, a stark contrast to their usual overconfidence. They weren't prepared for someone who had done their homework, someone who had every legal regulation, every safety measure, and every step meticulously documented. "Sir, you are aware that this fence could be considered a threat," one officer began, trying to regain control. "Consider," I interrupted, calm but firm. "This fence is entirely within legal parameters, and any attempt to trespass will be considered a violation of property rights. You've been warned." The officers exchanged glances. That split second of uncertainty, it was all I needed. They had assumed I would panic, assumed their authority, maybe even remove the fence quietly. Instead, here I was, standing my ground with absolute certainty. I walked closer, keeping my posture relaxed but authoritative, making sure they saw my determination. "Look," I said, "I've documented everything. Dates, times, photos, videos, even the safety instructions for the fence. If this escalates, I will be prepared." Their faces paled slightly. You could see it, the realization that they had miscalculated, that they had picked a fight with someone who wasn't afraid to defend themselves. The tension was palpable, thick like the dust still hanging in the morning air. I could almost hear the clock ticking, each second marking the moment their overconfidence began to crumble. I knew I had to maintain control of the situation, not with aggression, but with calm authority. "You might want to leave," I said quietly, but with enough weight that they understood I wasn't bluffing. "This property is private, and this fence is here to protect it. Do not test me." For a few long moments, there was silence. Then, finally, one of them spoke, almost reluctantly. "We'll document this and report back to our board." I nodded, holding their gaze. "Do that, but make sure your report reflects reality." They retreated to their truck, looking over their shoulders, and drove off slowly. I stood there for a long time after they left, letting the adrenaline wash over me. Relief mixed with satisfaction. I had faced the threat without fear, without overreacting, and I had established a boundary they couldn't ignore. But I knew this was only the beginning. They would escalate. They would try every tactic in the book: complaints, legal notices, maybe even more aggressive intimidation. I had to be ready. I spent the rest of the day checking every part of the fence again, running small tests to ensure it was fully functional but perfectly safe. I documented everything meticulously, photographing the posts, marking the wires, and taking notes. This was not just about defense. It was about strategy. Every action I took was laying the groundwork for the inevitable court battle. As evening approached, I sat on my porch, sipping a cold drink, watching the vineyard stretch out before me. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the rows of grapevines. The hum of the fence was steady and reassuring, a constant reminder that I had taken control of my land. I thought about what had driven me here, the months of intimidation, the constant fear that my property could be encroached upon, the arrogance of people who thought rules didn't apply to them. Every memory fueled my resolve. I wasn't just protecting a piece of land. I was standing up for myself, for my rights, and for every landowner who had ever been underestimated. Night fell, and with it came a quiet satisfaction. I knew the HOA would not be able to ignore the fence. They had been warned, and if they came back, they would face consequences they hadn't anticipated. I felt a surge of confidence, tempered with patience, knowing that the real battle, the legal battle, was still ahead. I prepared my evidence files that night: photos, timestamps, and copies of property deeds. Every small detail was accounted for, every potential loophole covered. The next steps were clear. I would not be bullied, and I would not back down. As I finally turned in for the night, I looked out over the vineyard, the soft glow of the fence lining the property edges, and whispered to myself, "Bring it on. I'm ready for whatever comes next." And deep down, I knew they regretted underestimating me already. The courtroom smelled of polished wood, old paper, and nervous energy. I walked in, my steps steady, my heart calm. Months of preparation. Every document, every photo, every timestamp meticulously gathered had led to this moment. The electric fence wasn't just a barrier, it was evidence. A symbol of my right to protect what was mine. The HOA lawyers were already there, smirks firmly in place, confidence radiating from their every movement. They thought this was going to be easy. They thought I would crumble under pressure. But I had done my homework. I had legal counsel, and I had facts on my side. I took a deep breath and sat down. My lawyer gave me a reassuring nod, and I felt the tension ease slightly. The judge entered, robes swaying, expression neutral, but eyes sharp. Court was in session. "Let's proceed," the judge said, voice calm but authoritative. The HOA lawyer started, their voice smooth, trying to frame the story their way. "Your Honor, the defendant has installed an unauthorized electric fence on property that we claim is under HOA jurisdiction." I listened carefully, letting them speak, waiting for the moment to respond. Every claim they made had a counterpoint. Every assumption they had made was flawed. When it was my turn, I stood. My voice was steady, my posture confident. "Your Honor, this fence is entirely within my property lines. I have every record to prove compliance with local and state regulations. This was installed to protect my land, not to threaten anyone. Every precaution has been taken to ensure safety." The judge nodded, clearly interested. As I presented my evidence, photos of the installation, timestamps, safety instructions, warning signs, property deeds, and even emails between the HOA and myself showing prior threats. Each piece of evidence built a story of responsibility and preparation. I could see the officers I had faced in the vineyard sitting stiffly, unable to hide their frustration. Their confidence was waning, replaced by uncertainty. They hadn't anticipated that I would bring every detail to the courtroom. The HOA attorney tried again, raising objections, questioning the legality of the fence. I remained calm, responding to each point with facts, documentation, and reason. These objections have no merit. The installation complies with all local regulations and was done with safety as the top priority. Any trespass onto my property after this warning is legally actionable. Witnesses from my side of the story were called next. My neighbors, who had observed the property for years, spoke to my diligence and the harmless nature of the fence. Their testimonies painted a picture of a responsible, careful landowner, not an aggressor. By the time I finished presenting, the courtroom atmosphere had shifted. Where the HOA had entered confident and smug, now there was a tangible tension, an awareness that they had underestimated me from the start. During the cross-examination, the HOA's points faltered. Every attempt to paint me as reckless or unlawful was met with calm, undeniable facts. I stayed composed, answering questions truthfully, emphasizing safety, legality, and my right to defend my property. Outside, the media had started to take notice. The story of a landowner standing up to the HOA was compelling. Cameras clicked, pens scribbled, and whispers traveled through the gallery. This was no longer just about a fence. It was about principle, property rights, and courage. Finally, the judge called for closing statements. My lawyer summarized the evidence, highlighting every precaution, every documented step, and every act of responsibility on my part. Then I spoke directly to the court, my voice firm but sincere. "I have done nothing more than protect my property, which is my legal right. This fence represents not aggression, but the assertion of responsibility and care for what I have worked for my entire life." The HOA attorney's closing was sharp but lacked substance. The weight of my preparation, my calm demeanor, and the evidence I presented overshadowed their arguments. They could no longer intimidate. Their authority had been challenged and exposed as hollow. When the judge adjourned the session to deliberate, I returned to my seat, heart racing but filled with a quiet confidence. Every moment had led to this, every preparation and careful planning validated. Hours later, the verdict came. The judge ruled in my favor. The HOA had overstepped, and the fence was fully legal. Any further attempts to interfere with my property would have consequences. Relief and triumph washed over me, an overwhelming mix of joy, vindication, and satisfaction. As I stepped out of the courtroom, I can't believe they tried to intimidate him like that. Slowly, a sense of respect and admiration began to ripple through the community. For once, the story wasn't just about property rights. It was about courage, preparation, and standing up for what is right. Later that evening, I sat on my porch, the golden sun dipping behind the hills, casting long shadows across the vineyard. The electric fence hummed softly, almost like a heartbeat, steady and reassuring. I thought about everything that had led to this moment, the threats, the frustration, the fear, and the decision to fight back in a way that was controlled and legal. I realized that my emotions had guided me, but my actions had solidified the outcome. Reflecting on the journey, I couldn't help but feel a deep connection to the land. Every grapevine seemed alive, every row a testament to my dedication. And yet, it wasn't just about the physical space, it was about the principle. About showing that no amount of intimidation, no veneer of authority, could erase the rights of someone who had prepared, who had acted responsibly, and who refused to be bullied. I thought back to the morning when I first saw that HOA notice, the fear and anger that had welled up inside me. It had been a moment of reckoning. I had two choices: allow myself to be intimidated or rise to the challenge. Using strategy, knowledge, and careful planning, I chose the latter. And every action since then, the meticulous planning, the fence installation, the documentation, the calm confrontation, had led to this victory. That night, after dinner, I walked along the property again, flashlight in hand, inspecting every post and wire. The vineyard was quiet except for the gentle hum of the fence. In the distance, the hills glowed under the moonlight. I paused, taking in the scene, the land I had fought for, the boundaries I had protected, and the sense of peace that now filled the space. I realized that standing firm wasn't just about winning a court case. It was about reclaiming my confidence, my voice, and my authority over my own property. As I continued along the path, I thought about the HOA officers. I imagined their conversations after the ruling, the frustration, the regret. They had underestimated me, assumed that a landowner like me would back down, and now they had been proven wrong. But it wasn't vengeance that fueled me. It was justice, fairness, and the satisfaction of defending what was rightfully mine. In the days that followed, the community began to notice a change. Word spread of the legal victory, of the calm, yet decisive way I had handled the threats. Some neighbors approached, asking questions about the fence, seeking advice on how to protect their own property. I answered patiently, sharing knowledge and encouraging responsible action. It wasn't about showing off. It was about creating awareness and fostering a sense of empowerment. One afternoon, a local journalist approached, camera in. The sunlight hit my face, and I felt lighter than I had in months. People around me congratulated, shook hands, and smiled. The officers I had faced before were gone, defeated not by aggression but by knowledge, preparation, and steadfastness. Driving back home, I looked at the fence from the truck window. It wasn't just a barrier, it was a testament to standing firm, to defending what is rightfully yours, and to showing that preparation and courage can overcome arrogance and threats. That night, I sat on the porch again, looking out over my land. The vineyard glowed softly in the twilight. The hum of the electric fence was steady and reassuring. For the first time in months, I felt completely at peace. I had stood up. I had defended my home. And I had won. I whispered to myself, almost in disbelief. They regretted underestimating me. And now everyone knows. The wind carried the words across the vineyard. And for once, the property felt truly mine, safe, respected, and defended. The morning sunlight poured across my vineyard, glinting off the wires of the electric fence I had installed months ago. The events of the courtroom were still fresh in my mind, replaying like a high-stakes drama in slow motion. I could still see the HOA officers' faces when the judge ruled in my favor. The way their confidence had crumbled under the weight of truth and preparation. But even as the victory settled in, I knew the real journey wasn't over. Returning home that day, the vineyard felt different. Every row of grapevines, every post, every stretch of land seemed to hum with a quiet energy. as if acknowledging the battles fought and won. I walked along the fence line, checking each post, making sure the hum of electricity was steady and safe. It wasn't just a fence, it was a symbol, a line that represented not aggression, but protection, responsibility, and resilience. I could still hear the echoes of the courtroom, the objections, the arguments, the tension. And yet, beneath all that, a calm clarity had emerged. I realized that this wasn't just a legal victory. It was a personal triumph. It was proof that standing firm, preparing meticulously, and respecting both the law and your own limits could overturn even the most arrogant opposition. I spent the afternoon documenting everything. Photos of the vineyard, close-ups of the fence, the placement of warning signs, all carefully cataloged. I wanted a permanent record of my diligence, a visual testament that I had acted responsibly. As I snapped the final photo of the fence humming gently in the afternoon light, I felt a surge of pride. This was my land. My rules applied here. My work had mattered, and now it was recognized legally. Neighbors began to emerge from their homes. Some curious, others quietly congratulatory. They had been following the story, watching a determined landowner face off against an overbearing HOA. Conversations started in hushed tones at first. Did you hear what happened in car?
Can you tell us what this experience has taught you? They asked. I paused, thinking carefully. It taught me that knowledge is power, preparation is key, and standing firm with respect for the law can overcome even the most intimidating opposition. Fear is natural, but letting it dictate your actions is optional. You have to take control of your circumstances responsibly. The story ran in local media, and the response was overwhelming. Emails, messages, and calls poured in from people thanking me for sharing my experience. Many had faced similar struggles with authority, with organizations trying to impose rules unfairly. They found inspiration in my determination, and it felt rewarding to know that my actions could empower others. At night, as the vineyard settled into calm, I reflected once more on the journey. The electric fence, now a permanent fixture, stood not just as a physical barrier but as a symbol of resilience, preparation, and self-respect. It reminded me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it, with careful planning and a clear sense of purpose. Before going to bed, I checked my evidence one last time, making sure all records were safely stored. I thought about the months of effort, the confrontations, the planning, and the courtroom battle. Every detail mattered. Every small action had contributed to the victory. And most importantly, I had done it without losing my integrity, my calm, or my sense of responsibility. Finally, I sat on the porch one last time that evening, staring out over the vineyard. The fence's hum was steady, almost musical, blending with the sounds of nature around me. I whispered to myself, "This is my land. My rules apply here, and I will protect it." The moon rose over the hills, casting a silver glow over the grapevines. A sense of completeness settled over me. The battle had been won, but more than that. I had reclaimed my peace, my confidence, and my authority over my own life. I leaned back, taking a deep breath, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. The HOA would think twice before challenging anyone like me again. And as I watched the moonlight glint off the electric wires, I knew this was just the beginning of a life where I stood firm, defended my rights, and showed that careful planning, courage, and integrity could overcome any threat. And in that moment, I realized something important. Victory isn't just measured by court rulings or monetary settlements. It's measured by the strength of your convictions, the calmness of your resolve, and the respect you earn by standing up for what is yours. This was more than a fence. This was proof that courage, preparation, and persistence can rewrite the story, turn fear into power, and make even the most overconfident adversaries regret underestimating you.